Michael, can you hear me now? All right, no questions. We're going to move forward. All right, so what are your duties to or obligations to the principal? One of them is obvious, being available. The principal to you, I mentioned earlier, being available, providing all the information, cannot conceal anything from you, and compensation, right? Breach of duty. This is important right here. An agent is liable for breach of duty to the client or customer. Since clients and customers rely on the expertise and actions of agents performing within the scope of their authority. Regulatory agencies and courts aggressively enforce agency laws, standards, and regulations. All right? Breach of duty may result in rescission of the listing agreement. So if you represent the seller, you lose the listing agreement. And you're like, okay, there's more sellers out there, right? I can lose commission on this one, right? No problem. Forfeiture or giving up of any compensation that may already been earned. No problem. There's more money to be made. These last two should be your concern. If the first two are not a concern, this should be. Disciplinary action by state law, license laws authorities, including license suspension or revocation. If your license is suspended or revoked, then can you practice? Can you make more money? No, you have to change professions, start all over again, whatever it might be. And the final one, suit for damages in court. Okay? So if the first two don't affect you, the last two should definitely affect you somehow, right? You could lose your license and you can get sued for a bunch of money. Pollyanna, I see that you're there. Check in. And Brenda, make sure you're on camera. I guess 10 minutes, 11-minute breaks is not enough. We come back and you go for another break. All right. Anyway, forms of real estate agency. We have single agency, sub-agency, dual agency, no agency, or no sub-agency. Okay? Sub-agency, we're going to talk about it like very, very brief. We barely ever use this anymore. Sub-agency. The ones you need to remember is single agency, you represent one party. Dual agency, you represent both parties. Or no agency, where you don't represent either party. These are the ones you really, really need to know. In fact, every state has a rule regarding these, or a law regarding these positions as an agent, right? And with that law, or with that rule, right, and regulations, comes a requirement for disclosure. Because if you represent one party only, right, if you represent one party only, then the party must know what are your duties to that party, right? And if somebody else shows up, what are you required to present to the other party? If you represent both of them, then they have to be aware of obligations and consequences. And if you don't represent either, they have to be aware as well that I don't represent you, I'm just helping you facilitate the transaction, right? So everything must be disclosed. Jose, breach of duty means, so breach is breaking something, right? So if I have a contract with you, Jose, I have a contract with you, and I fail to do something in the contract, or you fail to do something in the contract, then we are in breach of contract, or breaking the agreements in the contract. So breach of duty is, if you are my client, right, I'm obligated to perform certain duties that we just talked about before the break, right? Care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. If I fail at any of that, then I'm breaking my duty, my obligation. And I could get fired by you, or I could go in front of a court, real estate commission, and then even potentially in front of a court, depending on how serious the issue is. Default, yes, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about single agency. Now, single agency means you represent, so single, it's obvious, you represent one party in the transaction. That may be either the seller or the buyer. So if you're a single agent, right, you only represent one party to the transaction. Could be the seller, could be the buyer, could be the landlord, could be the tenant. But you do not represent the other side, only one, your client. Okay? Real estate vernacular calls an agent of the seller and owner the listing broker. An agent who works for the listing broker and who obtained the listings is a listing agent. A broker who represents the buyer's broker. The buyer is the buyer's broker. And one who does this as a specialization is a buyer broker, right? I just want to show something real quick. If you represent the seller, I was saying this before to Sanam on YouTube. She was asking this question, right? So if it's the seller you represent, you are the listing broker, okay? The listing, because you're advertising the property, right? Right? You're advertising the property. If you represent the buyer, there's one thing missing here. If you represent the buyer, you are the buyer's broker, but you're also called selling broker. Okay? And I just want to point out these two because it might pop up in the future in the school exam or state exam. There's a listing broker, advertises the property, and there's a selling broker, the one that concludes the sale. Okay? So guys, here's my phone. Right? I'm going to hire one of you to put this on the market. You are the listing agent. You're advertising, you're marketing the property. Okay? If one of you brings a potential buyer and that buyer buys, then you are the one that sold the property. You concluded the sale. You are the selling agent. The reason why I'm saying this is a lot of people get confused. Selling agent must represent the seller. No. Selling agent is the one that's able to conclude the sale. It's the one that brings a buyer. Okay? Selling agent, buyer. Selling broker, buyer. Listing or advertising agent or advertising broker is the one that puts the property for sale. Okay? The one that advertises the property. You got it? So? Okay. If you go to, usually I give Walmart as an example. If you go to Walmart, okay, there's a bunch of employees, correct? They have a bunch of employees. Let's go to electronics, and I give you the example. The phone. Electronics, there's a bunch of phones there. Now, somebody put the phone up for sale, correct? But then they have a bunch of people that work there, usually one person in the or two in the tech department, right? That one person is going to sell the phone that's there, sell it to you. Who concluded the sale? Was it Walmart or the agent? The agent, right? Customer service rep that was there concluded the sale. So that's the selling agent. That's the one that sold the item. Okay? Somebody listed, somebody put it available on the shelf, but it wasn't the same person. Okay? I could have put on the shelf, but then you came along and you concluded the sale to a potential buyer. You are the selling agent. You guys got it? Yeah? Say louder, I'm sorry. The listing broker represents the seller. It's the one that advertises. So if you have your house for sale and I mean you want to advertise your property, I go there. What I'm doing is a listing interview, right? And if you agree to it, we're going to prepare a listing agreement. I'm listing your property. What the listing means is advertising your property. I'm going to put it on the multiple listing service where a lot of people can see the property. It's marketing. It's like putting on Craigslist, putting on Facebook Marketplace. I'm just putting it there, right? Just advertising. Listing broker or listing agent is the one that advertises the property. The buyer's broker is the one that brings a buyer that's ready, willing, and able, right, to buy the property and closes. So if somebody brings a buyer, he or she is the one that sold the property that was advertised initially. Okay? Okay. At home? Questions? We're good? All right, that's why I'm pointing it out here because it's very, very important. A lot of people get these confused because a selling broker should be the seller's agent, right? It represents the seller. No, it's the one that concludes the sale. Okay, the one that brings a contract. I'm going to skip sub-agency right now, like I said. And I want you to go to next page where it says dual agents. All right? Where it says dual agent, that means you represent both sides. Both of them are your clients. So you represent the seller, you represent the buyer, you represent the landlord, and you represent the tenant. That means you represent both sides in the transaction. Okay? And that means that both of them are now principals to the transaction. So that means what, Stephanie? If both of them are principals to the transaction, what does that mean? Who's the principal? Usually, who's the principal? Client. Perfect, Brenda. Thank you. The client is the principal. Client is the principal. Why are you laughing? What did I say? Brenda. Client is the principal. Not the seller, Stephanie. The client is the principal. Who's the client? Whoever hires you. Who's the client? Whoever hires you. It could be the seller, it could be the buyer. Brenda says, I was cheering that I got it right and I forgot the camera was on. Oh, okay. You can cheer, you know. Lewis did that yesterday, remember? When we were talking about the rectangular survey system and we had the little squares and all that, and he had the first one right and the second one like, wah, wrong. Okay. It's fun to watch you guys celebrate. So, Stephanie, did you get it? Is it the seller? Could be. Is it the buyer? Could be. The principal is the one you represent. But in this case, you represent both of them because it's dual agency. If you represent both of them, that means that you owe both of them specific duties, correct? Right. Okay. So it says here, dual agency becomes increasingly prevalent with an advent of buyer and tenant representation. Dual agency may arise from voluntary, specific agreements between the principal parties, and from the parties' actions, much like implied single agency. The problem is conflict of interest. Why would dual agency have a conflict of interest? Because we need to figure out whose side are we going to keep things confidential. If you represent both, that means they're both first, right? Up in the pedestal, all the way up there, raise the roof, right? For them. But who are we going to cheer for the most? Is it going to be the seller? Or is it going to be the buyer? Is it going to be the one that pays you? Or the one that doesn't? Who are you going to cheer for the most? Is it the one that gives is fighting for the highest price, or is the one that's fighting for the lowest price? That is the challenge, right? That is the challenge of representing both sides. Okay? See what we got. Loyalty is going to be an issue. Yep. Representing both parties. Whose side are you on? Exactly. They're both clients, so you have to be honest. And you get commission from both sides, so there's money involved. Exactly. So if there's money involved, who are you going to represent the most? Neither. You can't. So so not the most. So we're going to keep both at the same level. Okay? So we're not going to pull more to one side or more to the other. We're not going to do that. So there has to be written informed consent. Written informed consent. Right? Like Jose was writing on YouTube. Written informed consent. In states that permit or allow dual agency, the agent must meet strict disclosure requirements, and principals must agree in writing. So there has to be a disclosure in writing where the seller says, you know what, Andrea, you can represent the buyer. And the buyer says, you know what, Andrea, I got no problem with you representing the seller. They're both in agreement. They both sign that it's okay for you to represent both of them. You got it? Has to be in writing. This is key. That's why it's called disclosed dual agency. It becomes voluntary. Disclosed dual agency. If it's not disclosed that you represent both sides, then you could get sued for your full commission and more. Okay? The parties to a transaction may create dual agency by giving written consent in disclosure forms, confirmation forms, and sales contract forms. For example, an agent represents a buyer who becomes interested in a property that the agent has listed with a seller. The agent then discloses the relationship with the principals to both principals, and the principals agree in writing to move ahead. Disclosed dual agency is thus voluntarily created. So Eduardo, all the duties that come with fiduciary duties that come with it must be present, except one. You're not going to pull more towards the seller for a higher amount or more towards the buyer for a lower amount. That's the only thing you're not going to do. Everything else, hold proper accounting of their monies, being loyal and keeping things confidential, you're going to do it. Following lawful instructions or requests, okay, obedience, you're still going to do that. Disclosure, you're going to disclose everything that could affect the transaction. The only thing, and care for your clients the same way. The only thing we're not doing is saying, hey, seller, buyer is willing to give more. Hey, buyer, seller is willing to go less. That's the only thing that pretty much we're not going to do. Everything else must be there. Stephanie, is that seen often? Dual agency. Well, I'll give you the example of what Gilbert was saying before. He said that the offer was never presented because the agent was trying to become a dual agent and therefore receive full commission. Okay? If that's what you're trying to do, guys, you are fools. Okay? Full commission makes you a fool out of yourself. If a buyer naturally comes along and becomes the highest and best offer, one of your clients becomes the highest and best offer, great. But do not try to become a dual agent by ignoring other potential customers or offers from other agents. Do not do that. At the end of the day, you're opening a door to litigation, losing your license, and again, getting sued for a lot of money. Don't do it. Plus, if I put a listing up and I contact you guys, right, there's 17, 18 people here, plus whoever is watching on YouTube, right? If I bring it to you guys, now I got an army of people looking for buyers. That sale is going to be way faster. Should I tell you guys, no, I'm not showing the property because I'm trying to find one so I can get full commission? Well, now it could take a month, 2 months, 3 months before I find a buyer. What's the point of getting full commission if it's going to take me that long? I want plenty of commissions that come through. Does that make sense? So I'm going to send it out to all you guys and say, hey, new listing. You guys got a buyer? Get out of the way. Got it? Let's see what we got. Ron, how could there be a conflict of interest when both parties must be completely transparent about their motivation to reach the same goal? Again, it's about the monies. It's the same goal, which is closing. But if I'm rooting for you, the seller, to give you more money, which is the higher price, but I represent the buyer, my job when representing the buyer is negotiating for the lowest amount possible. My job when representing the seller is to negotiate for the highest amount possible. When I represent both, how can I do that? There's a conflict of interest. If I root for you, the seller, because the higher the sale, the more money I make as a commission, right? Then, was I really representing the buyer? Did I do my job for the buyer? No. Brenda, what if they don't agree with you representing both parties, but they still want you to? Okay. Then I cannot represent them in that transaction. So, if Brenda, so if you come to me and say, "Hey, Bruno, I want to buy a house," right? And I say, I have a listing. Pollyanna is the seller, right? Pollyanna is the seller, right? Then I'm representing both if you like the house. If I do not tell you, right? If I do not tell you, then both of you can sue me because I was acting in a conflict of interest. I'm getting commission without you being fully aware of how I represent you or not, right? But the moment I start telling you, hey, Brenda, I represent the seller, Pollyanna, I represent the buyer, and you guys go like, no. You either represent me or you don't represent anyone, right? At that moment, then I cannot show you that house that I'm an agent as well. So I have to bring it to a different transaction where I'm only a seller's agent or only a buyer's agent. Okay? So that's the reason why we have to disclose, so people know what they can expect. Ron, but isn't your real goal to make an agreed price? Yeah, agreed by who? By them, right? Without me rooting for one side or rooting for the other. Back to the same thing. If I'm a single agent and I represent the seller, my job is to make sure that whoever you bring, because it's your clients, whoever you bring, are going to bid the highest possible. So I'm going to work and negotiate for the highest and best for the seller. If I represent the buyer but not the seller, I'm going to negotiate the lowest price possible because that's what's in my client's best interest. Now, Ron, if I represent both, how can I do that? Okay, the price is going to be an issue, as always. Gilbert, I seen houses going up in house after putting an offer with an agent that wasn't the one who put the house up. Open houses go on open houses go on open house after putting an offer with an agent. Sorry, a little lost on the. You've seen people holding open houses and it's not their listing. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I can hold a listing on your property. I mean, an open house on your listing. If I have potential buyers or if I know how to market, because there's people that are really good at doing marketing, right? I know I can bring 10, 20 leads to your house, your listing. I'm going to call you up, Gilbert, and say, hey, can I host an open house? It's your property, but can I host one? You don't even have to be in the same agency. What are you going to say? You're going to say no, Gilbert, if I can bring you 20 potential buyers and offers? You're going to say no to me? No. Okay. Andrea says only one. Eduardo, I know some real estate investors use dual agency to take advantage of it. Can you explain to us in what case can you work it out in there? Real estate investors dual agency? Well, the only way that it would be beneficial is if I'm either the seller myself or the buyer myself. So if I'm the buyer, I'm representing myself in the transaction, so my commission could be used towards the down payment or towards the closing costs. So I'm saving money. If I'm the listing agent of my own house, I don't have to pay myself commission. I'm paying whoever brings a buyer, so I'm saving money. That's the advantage. So Ron just wrote, your goal, well, probably not just wrote, there's more messages, but your goal is the lowest price for the buyer, highest price for the seller. So isn't your goal really to find a common ground? When I represent both, yes. When I represent both, yes, without pushing one side or the other the most. When I represent one, it's either the interest of the seller, which is the highest, or the interest of the buyer, which is the lowest. Ultimately, it's always a common ground. But if I represent the seller, I'm always going to be pulling towards the seller side more, right? And when I represent both, I cannot get involved in that. I can only say, hey, seller, buyer offered this much. Buyer, hey, seller countered this much, without many negotiation towards one or the other. Okay. Andrea, yeah, you can choose. If they reject you can choose to keep only one. Yes. Joshua, are you not allowed to broker a deal that allows two to reach a point of agreement? As long as you keep both parties up to the transaction. So that's what I was just saying right now. We can accept the offers, but we're not negotiating amounts. Okay? Commission-wise, who gets the bigger commission? The agent who's representing the seller. It's agreed upon in the list at the time of the listing most of the times. So I could have a 6% commission that I negotiated with the seller, but I'm paying you, the buyer's agent, I'm paying you 2%. How much do I keep? 4. But I can also say, if I'm smart, right? In today's market, it doesn't matter because there's a bunch of buyers out there. But I can also say, I'm going to keep 2.5 and I'm giving 3.5, right? How many of you would show the house that gives 3.5 versus the house that gives 2%? Raise your hand who would show the 3.5 instead of the 2%. It pays you 3.5% versus the 2%. Who would show that house? Okay. How many of you would show the 2%? Okay. So you guys are going to be great realtors, because if you're looking at commission payouts versus your client's needs, right? You shouldn't be in this business. But believe it or not, there's a lot of realtors that's what they'll do. My buyer wants to buy a house, single family, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, up to $300,000. There's like 10 of those as an example. Some realtors will filter, out of those 10, will filter the ones that pay the most commission, not the ones that are the best for the client. So now I'm going to go to the one that pays 3.5 or the 3% versus the one that pays 2 or 1.5. We cannot look at, I don't even look at commission when I'm looking at houses for clients. I don't look at commission at all. I skip that portion. Does it match my client's needs or wants? That's it. You got it? Commission, whether it's 1.5% or 3%, does not matter. You will get paid if you close. If you're just looking at money, most likely you won't close. Okay? So commission is, everything is negotiable at the time of listing, usually. Eduardo, I meant when they want to buy cheaper to flip because they think the listing agent will go on their side because it's commission. Okay, I'm a little lost here. So you're telling me, okay, I got you. So you're telling me that if I'm an investor, you want to go straight to the listing agent instead of having an agent, and therefore negotiate, hey, since you represent me as well, drop your commission. All right, make it cheaper. Good luck with that. Commission is negotiated with the seller. I'm getting paid regardless. It's the seller that pays me, not you, investor. If I allow some type of, I can give you what's called a rebate. We're going to talk about it in a different chapter. I can give you a rebate where I give you a credit, but my commission is my commission. Brenda, you keep saying you'll represent both, but you'll be pulling on the higher offer. No, I cannot pull for the higher offer. The opposite. I have to be impartial when it comes to the offer side of it. See, I have to uphold my client's best interest, except for that. Right? Let's go for common ground. So I have to disclose stuff. I have to obey lawful instructions. I have to represent the client to the best of my abilities. Okay? Go above and beyond. But I cannot pull towards the higher offer or the lowest offer when I represent both. It's pretty much I'll be the referee. Okay? Red corner, blue corner, fight. That's it. Okay? But once you hear the bell, ding, 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 we're going to sit down with both of you, massage your shoulder and say, hey, you're doing great. This is what we got to do next. You see what I'm saying? All the steps. But the money, the offer, you guys get in the ring and you negotiate. Okay? Present me your best offer, buyer, seller, counter if you want. I cannot advise you on monies. Okay? All things equal, are the price the same? I think I mentioned that. Money is money, loyalty. Doesn't matter how much percentage, very good. Filtering out opportunity based on percentage is dumb. Absolutely, 100%. You have to be neutral and just disclose all with the binding. Yep, that's it. You are like a judge. I just said that, like in the middle of the ring. That's it. All right, YouTube. Do you disclose your commission to any party in a dual agency? So commissions are that does not have to be disclosed. No, commissions don't have to be disclosed to either party. I mean, the seller, if the seller is the one paying, that's a listing agreement. It has nothing to do with the buyer. The buyer cannot go like, hey, how much you getting paid here? Right? That's what Eduardo wanted to do. How much you getting paid here? I want a better deal, so you drop your commission. Right? No. Don't have to disclose that. Okay. So now, as a dual agent, can I tell the seller that the buyer is willing to pay more? Nope. That's exactly what I'm trying to tell you not to do. You cannot go to the seller and say, hey, seller, buyer has more money. Because then I'm in breach of loyalty and confidentiality. Right? That's it. So I cannot. I cannot go to the buyer. If I represent both, I cannot go to the buyer and say, hey, buyer, seller's willing to take less. Don't offer as much. Let's get this done quick. Can't do it. Because I represent both sides. Okay? Andrea said, I'm not going to say that out loud. All right. Implied and undisclosable agency. You're talking about houses in Portugal. Different rules, different games, different everything. Okay? Dre, I like your mustache. He's over there like with a pen. All right. Implied and undisclosable agency. If a broker or agent acts in any way that leads the customer to believe that the agent is representing the customer, a dual agency has potentially been created. For example, a buyer makes confidential disclosures to the agent who works for the seller and exhorts the agent to keep them confidential. The buyer wants the house, but knows he's going to lose his job in a month and probably will not qualify for financing. Remember I mentioned something like this before? If the agent agrees to keep information confidential, the agent has not only created an agency relationship with the buyer, but is now in a dual agency situation. Moreover, if the agent fails to disclose the buyer's confidence to the seller, the agent has violated the fiduciary duty to the seller. Who do you represent? The client who hired you. So any and all information that you find out that could affect the transaction must be disclosed to the client, not the other way around. You're not required to protect the customer in any way, shape, or form. And if you do so without disclosing to the seller, then you violated your seller-agency relationship. Sued. Big time. Duties of a disclosal agent. The first duty is to disclose agency relationship to both principal parties or to withdraw from one side of the duality. After disclosing, the agent must obtain written consent. We already got this. You must obtain written consent from both parties. If both parties accept dual agency, the agent owes all fiduciary duties to both parties except full disclosure, undivided loyalty, and exclusive representation. Okay? Everything else is there except these. As I said, undivided loyalty. I cannot go and say that the buyer has more money, right? Then I'm not being loyal to the buyer. I cannot say the seller will accept more money because then I'm not being faithful or loyal to the seller, and so on. And then there's this one, no agency. Called a transaction broker or manager. Okay? Pretty much all we do when there's no agency is manage the transaction. Let's think about it this way. If you guys hire an attorney to fill out the paperwork, right? An attorney to help you get your citizenship, for instance, right? Then the attorney represents you, correct? You hire an attorney to represent you. If you come to a multi-service store, right? And you say, hey, I heard you guys prepare a documentation to apply for the citizenship, right? Are they going to tell you that they represent you? No. What they're going to do is say, hey, we do prepare our documentation, but you are liable for anything that might go wrong, right? All we do is fill out information and help you submit to the immigration. Does that make sense? So a seller's agent represents the buyer, represents the seller. A buyer's agent represents the buyer. Dual agent represents both. If you are a transaction broker, then there's no agency because there's no employer, there's no employee. I'm just a facilitator or manager that's preparing the documentation, right? And opening doors, right? Here you go. Open door. You inspect. At this point, I'm not liable, right? If I don't look at all the details of the house, I don't have to put extra efforts to figure out if there's any issues with the house. I'm just going to advise you on stuff and you do it if you want. Okay? So in recent years, the brokerage industry has striven to clear up the question of who works for whom and who owes fiduciary duties to whom. A recent solution allows a broker to represent no one in a transaction. That means you're acting as a transaction broker or facilitator, and you're not an agent of either the buyer or the seller. In this relationship, the facilitator does not advocate the interests of either party. I'm not putting anybody above one or the other. Okay? So what do we do as a transaction broker? We help account for all money and property received or handled. Exercise reasonable skill and care. Provide honesty and fair dealing. Wait a minute, wait. Have you seen these two before? Have you seen these two? The reasonable care and skill and fair dealing? Honesty and fair dealing. Have you seen this before? Where? When we're dealing with? Huh? Nope. Nope. When we're dealing with customers. Okay? Josh and Janice, for clients, there's fiduciary duties and there's cold. Care, obedience, account, loyalty, disclosure. That's for clients. For customers, all we have to do is be fair and honest and reasonable degree of care and skill. I don't have to go above and beyond. Okay? That's the difference. So perfect. We need to present all offers in a timely fashion. We need to assist the parties in closing the transaction. We assist. Keep the parties fully informed. Advise the parties to obtain expert advice or counsel. Disclose to both parties in residential sales transaction all material facts affecting the property value. And protect the confidence of both parties in matters that would disadvantage one over the other. So still fair and honestly. That's it. Okay? Here are the duties that are not imposed. Obligations not imposed on the transaction broker. Since there's no fiduciary duties or obligations binding the transaction broker, the broker is held to standards for dealing with customers as opposed to clients. Okay, so I was saying this, right? When it's a transaction broker, you're dealing with these people as if they're just customers. Same obligations as if it was a customer. Transaction broker is under no obligation to inspect the property for the benefit of a party or verify the accuracy of statements made by a party. Okay? Transaction broker treated as customers. Guys, your cameras must be on at all times, otherwise it does not count towards your hours. This is your 8:35 announcement. I keep on repeating. No, I see you. You don't have to do the chicken dance. I saw you. Right, Andrea M was going like this, and I'm like, oh, here comes the song. Okay, Steph, I'm sorry. Did you by any chance take the vaccine, Stefan? Just wondering, or maybe something. No, don't laugh. Okay, so Gilbert's laughing. Friends of mine, they just took the something else. Okay, so friends of mine were they just went through that. They took the vaccine and they were horrible for the next 2 to 3 days. Went through a lot of stuff. Gilbert sold out. Yeah, that's it. He's like, what? Jose, so there's two different customers in a transaction broker. So you could be a transaction broker just for the seller, and that's your customer. Okay? You could be a transaction broker just for the buyer, and that's your customer. Right? Or you could still be a transaction broker for two people, seller and buyer. All you're saying to these people is that, hey, I do not represent you. I'm just facilitating the transaction. Make sure you guys can go and will go through with it. That's it. Just helping it. Okay? Josh says, I took the vaccine. I had serious chills for days. Yep. Stephanie, my boyfriend got both doses of Moderna and he just felt the soreness. Everybody's different. I have somebody that started working with us as of yesterday, and it says that both his parents are chemists for different. One is for Pfizer, and the other one was for, I think, Johnson & Johnson. And he was saying the best thing Get the virus whenever you have to get it and let your body fight it naturally. Getting the vaccine, you're just rushing it. You're like, hey, come to me. Let me get all the consequences right now. Anyway, but that's what he said. That's what his parents worked for, these companies that created a vaccine. So Gilbert says, I had COVID, but no vaccine. Me too. A year ago. Exactly a year ago. And I was this close to not being here this year. Anyway. But for some reason, somebody doesn't want me up there. They just said, nope, you're staying down here. You got to entertain these students. All right. All right, let's see. Who pays the transaction broker? Great question. Who pays the seller's agent? Who pays the buyer's agent? Who pays the disclosable agent? The same party that pays the transaction broker. The answer is whoever agrees to it. Simple. If the seller agreed to pay, then they pay. If the buyer agreed to pay, then they pay. Simple as that. It's by agreement. The payment is by agreement, not by representation. Remember that. Jose says, I meant you as a transaction broker. Treat him. Yes, Jose, as a transaction broker, we treat both parties as customers. Yes. All parties as customers. Yep, absolutely. Brenda, that's good because now I can get my license. But the fact that I'm still here? Oh, thank you. I'm glad that's all you care about. Like, Bruno, I'm glad you survived. No. It's great because I can get my license. Sure. All right. Anyway. Too much fun. Why are you putting me on blast like that? Because of your comments. Had to. I'm always put everybody on blast. Didn't you? Didn't you notice that yet? Agency disclosure rules. Expose everyone left and right. I know, I'm horrible. I'm horrible. Worst person in the world. Yep. Agency disclosure rules. So objectives. What are the goals or objectives of disclosure? Disclosure in the transaction is to remove confusion about who you're working for. It may also obviate complaints arising from customers and clients who feel they've been deceived. If you don't disclose and something goes wrong, right, towards their side, they're going to say, oh, no, you never told me you represent the other side, for instance, right? So specifically, the requirement to disclose aims to notify clients and customers about whom the agent represents, inform clients and customers of fiduciary duties and standards of care that the agent owes them, inform prospective clients and customers they have the choice in how they are represented, or obtain acknowledgement and acceptance of the disclosure from the principal parties. So the goal or objectives is to let everybody know what to expect. Pretty much that's what it is. What can you expect from me if I'm a seller's agent? What can you expect from me if I'm a buyer's agent? What can you expect from me if I represent both sides? Or what can you expect from me if I represent neither? Okay? Pretty much that's what it is. Sanam, thank you. All right. Recent legislation requires an agent to disclose to all parties the fact that the agent represents one and does not represent the other. In other words, an agent must inform a client and customer that the agent represents the client and does not represent the customer. What does this mean? And it might be a question in the state exam. It's very simple. Remember Gilbert talked about the open house? Right? Let's say I have an open house. I'm the listing agent. I represent the seller. Okay, let's say you hired, so seller's agent, represent the seller. A buyer walks through the open house, right? This is a potential question. He or she walks through the open house, right? And says, hey, Bruno, I checked the house. I like it. I don't have anybody helping me. I want to put an offer. Okay? My job at that moment is to stop you and say, look, before you say anything else, I just want to let you know, because I represent the seller, anything you tell me from now on can and will be used against you in negotiations. It's like the Miranda rights, right? Before negotiations. So because I do not represent you yet, maybe you choose to hire me, and I'll explain why, right? Why hire me or why not, right? Because I don't represent you yet, anything that you tell me right now. So if you walk through the door and say, I want to put an offer, I have like $500,000. I know the house is only worth 300. The moment you disclose information, I have to alert you that that information will be given to the seller because that's who I represent. You guys understand? This is recent law that says I have to disclose to customers the implications of me representing the seller and not the buyer, of me representing the buyer and not the seller, and so on. You guys got it? Yes. That's why you have to stop them before they even say the amount that they want to offer. No matter what you told me, right, I'm already obligated to say to my client. So it's not like you're going to change, oh, because you said that, forget, right? Yeah. They're not going to flash something in front of your eyes like MIB, right? Men in Black, flash something in front of your eyes. Okay, just forget the last 30 seconds where I said I had 500,000 in the account, right? That doesn't change. You already told me the information. I should have stopped you before you gave me information. Again, same thing as the Miranda rights. Technically, the cops cannot ask you anything without letting you know your rights. But is that the first thing they do when they stop you? License and registration, please. You just broke my rights. Right? Let me know that by presenting this information, you can find more information that could be deemed useful against me. But no. License and registration. Oh, it's expired? Really? I'm going to arrest you. By the way, anything you say or do can and will be used against you in the court of law. We're about 10 minutes too late, right? On those rights. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Anyway. Jose says, I didn't get it. What did you not get? Okay, actually, I know what you got. Let me explain like this, Jose. You're not a student of my school. You're on YouTube watching, right? Imagine this, guys. YouTube is customers. Zoomers and Prudential, you are clients of, as an example, clients of New Direction School. Okay? YouTubers, right? They don't have full access to all the benefits that you guys do. Okay? So you being our students, you have a student portal. You have our own dedicated Quizlet. You have a testing a portal as well, right? You have class replays, which they have also on YouTube, but you have class replays with questions and a bunch of other stuff there that they don't. So Jose, I have to tell you that on YouTube, the benefit that you get is to be able to participate in our classes, but you are limited. You guys understand? There's a limitation there. You are a customer, not a client. You guys got it? So I have to disclose these things. Somebody asked me yesterday on YouTube, oh, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me that I can get access to Quizlet and to exams and this and that? And I mentioned our students do, right? YouTubers, I'm sorry, right? So it's that separation that we have to let people know what to one side to expect or not. Okay. Jose says, cops don't say Miranda's rights. No, the cops are not going to tell you, by the way, these are your Miranda rights. No, but they will say right before you get arrested or as you're getting arrested, right? These are your rights. They do say that. Right? Anybody ever been arrested before? besides me? Okay, Lewis, of course, the firefighter. All right, Steph, got it. All right. Did they tell you your rights, Steph? They did? Okay, great. Lewis, did they tell you your rights? Or they just went, you're a firefighter, you should know this. Anyway. Anyway, so the difference, Sanam says, never been arrested. Congratulations. Then your criminal record is going to be easy to when you apply for your license. Client disclosure, customer disclosure. We already went through all this. Go to, sorry, page 151. We already went through all this. This is just a dual agent disclosures that I want to go over real quick. Again, dual agents. You must have written informed consent if you're a dual agent. Very important. So an agent who desires to operate. Hold on. Zoom is acting up again. I froze on Zoom. There you go. All right. Stephanie, I have a question. A, you're frozen. Okay, not anymore. And B, can I ask with the mic? I was going to say something, but I'll leave it like that. Go ahead. Ask away.
Since we're on the topic of disclosure, I wanted to ask...
I thought it was arrests.
What?
Topic of being arrested.
Oh, okay, yeah, but
no, go ahead.
On page 151, we're talking about here about disclosure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say if I have a seller, that's my client, and then I have two separate buyers that are, there's offers up. Then comes a third person, a third party that wants to offer for this house or whatever the case may be, and they ask what the other offers are for. Would that be part of a...
What is the amount of the other offers? That's what you're asking?
Yeah, like if they, people, I mean, at least specifically Hispanics, I feel like my aunt, for example,
Did you just say that?
Investment, and she always, like the other day, she had me ask a real estate agent what the other offers were. Mm-hmm. And then she gave an answer to her, so and that's why I'm asking you. Like,
wait. The agent said how much the offers were?
No. I didn't, like my aunt and her spoke because I was translating for them. For my aunt. But I was wondering if that's even allowed, because I would think kind of like, let's say in the medical field, there's HIPAA, right? There's certain things that you just can't disclose to people. So I'm assuming that the answer would be no.
Of course, the answer is no.
Okay.
So it's the same thing that we were saying before, confidentiality, right? You cannot disclose what the other offers are for, especially when you're trying to get the highest and best for the seller. Why would you allow, say, hey, just give me your highest and best? A voluntary act. Not like, hey, the best offer we have so far is 500. Can I, like, this is not an auction. Can I get 510? Right? And then call the other guy and say, hey, I just got 510. Can you give me 520? Right? We can't do that. You have to, out of free voluntary act, come up with what's your highest and best on this property. I cannot influence your decision in any way, shape, or form by disclosing other people's offers. So no.
Okay, perfect. I'm on mute. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. You guys got it? We're good? Okay. Now, so prohibited disclosures. Disclosure number 2 is that the seller, the buyer, will pay more than the price submitted in a written offer to the seller. It goes along with what we just said right now, kind of. We cannot say that the buyer to the buyer that the seller accept less than the listed price, motivation of any party concerning the transaction, or that the seller or buyer will agree to financing terms other than those offered. These are things you cannot disclose as a dual agent. Okay? You're fighting for both sides. That's it. Any other question? Anybody else wants the mic? It's open mic night. YouTubers, any questions? Let me know. Going once. Going twice. Sold. All right, guys. I highly advise you to review this chapter. If not the class replay, go to Quizlets, test yourself, because again, roughly 20 to 25% of the exam is just on surrounding the topics in this chapter. All right, that's a lot. It's only, as it says here, it's only a 12-page chapter, so there's a lot of questions around this. So it's more like scenarios. Somebody walks into an open house and tells you this. What should you do? Right? So make sure you clearly understand, right? Clearly understand what's what do you call it? What's being a client and what's being a customer. What's being a seller's agent, buyer's agent, disclosable agent, or transaction broker, and what that implicates. So go through the whole chapter. Because it is that important. It's going to play a role in the next few chapters as well. Okay? All right, guys? So I wish you an amazing evening and your vacation, because we're only going to see each other on Monday. No class for Thursday or Friday. And enjoy it. Let me know if you have any questions. I am catching up on a lot of stuff and questions that I received. And Andrea M., I got your call, so I'll address that as well. But ask questions, please. Participate in the WhatsApp group. A lot of students answer your questions because we already answered before. All right? Very important. It's not a WhatsApp number. If you go to the student portal, it says join a WhatsApp group. It's right there. It's the second option under the resources. Okay? Estrada? Bridget Estrada. See, I know my students. It's been a while though. Say hi to her. All right, guys. Have an amazing evening. Thank you.